A massive, mysterious wall hidden in the mountains of Turkey. This colossal structure, whose origin, purpose, and construction remain unknown, bears traces of advanced stoneworking techniques that seem to far exceed what we typically associate with ancient civilizations. How can we explain its perfectly smooth surface, strange arc-shaped marks, and the absence of any signs of block cutting, typical of quarries? And why is this structure more complex than the megaliths in Baalbek in China? What kind of technology could have been used to remove millions of tons of stone with such precision? Let's start with the fact that this is an extremely obscure site. There's no information about it. From a distance, it may seem like a natural formation, but the entire wall is covered in countless signs of human work. Millions of tons of stone have been removed by someone. Just look at the comparison with a person. The height of the wall reaches over 20 meters in some places. The scale of the work is astounding. There are reasons to believe that this is an unfinished part of a massive prehistoric structure. The rock has been worked from bottom to top. But if we think logically, how would one remove such a massive amount of stone? The length of the rock is over 100 meters, and throughout its length, it is marked with strange traces. What strikes me is their precision and uniformity. Many ancient structures have similar features, but usually in a more chaotic pattern. Here's a comparison with the megalithic structure in China. There, we can assume that ordinary picks and a vast amount of manual labor were used. But that's not the case here. The marks are more than a meter long, very large, rhythmic, and perfectly straight. It's incredible. How was this done? With what tools? And most importantly, these traces are on a leveled surface. Since we can see these traces, it means the wall was not polished. The tool that left these marks was the same one that formed the perfectly smooth surface. And this is after thousands of years of erosion. It was definitely not a simple pickaxe. Neither the size of the marks nor the quality of the final work match what humans could achieve with traditional tools. Similar sized marks can be seen on the giant blocks at Baalbek, but even there, they are less organized. But that's not all. In fact, this is an unfinished structure. And if we look at the base of the rock, we will notice completely different and even more inexplicable traces. The rock wasn't fully cut, and the lower section remains roughly worked. Here, a tool was used that removed the bulk of the stone, but its function did not include creating smooth surfaces. And the most important part is that it left traces. And honestly, I've never seen similar marks on other ancient megalithic structures. Throughout the rock, which spans over 100 meters, there are arc-shaped indentations at various levels. These indentations appear in steps, one after another. Each one ends with a small groove, a depression where the working part of the tool finished its cut. It could be assumed that this groove helped determine the tool's trajectory, guiding it along this boundary. This groove might have stabilized the tool, preventing it from going off course or shaking too much. But these are only assumptions. According to the official explanation, it's the same old pickaxe. These indentations run along the entire length of the rock. It's possible that the work wasn't finished, and the builders intended to level the rock to the ground level on the left. In that case, we can assume that the work was happening in parallel. They were leveling the wall on the right while also removing part of the rock from below. Otherwise, why level the wall when the base isn't fully processed yet? Look at the length of the arc-shaped traces. If they were just a few dozen centimeters, we could assume it was manual labor. But the length of these traces reaches several meters. Why don't we see similar boundaries on the wall? We can conclude that at least two different types of processing were used here. The bulk of the stone was removed by a tool that moved along a horizontal surface. When it was necessary to create smooth surfaces, the tool moved vertically. The traces left by these tools are fundamentally different. Look at the disproportion between a person and this excavation. The rock has been removed along its entire length, as if something enormous, like a tunneling machine, simply passed through and scraped away the material, leaving behind these marks, with gaps exactly 5 centimeters apart. Notice how straight this wall is. It's unclear why they would make such a smooth surface. In this wall, there are also small square indentations, just like the ones found on the megaliths in Baalbek. Their depth and side lengths are exactly 20 centimeters. Some speculate that they might have been used to secure some kind of equipment. The main question is, why create such a smooth, straight wall? If small blocks were being cut out, why don't we see the marks of those smaller blocks being sliced off? It's surprising how these 1.5 meter long angled cuts have been preserved. They are all rhythmic, with precise spacing, almost as if created by a machine. Why weren't the rocks cut into separate blocks? We don't see any division into individual blocks here, and that's strange. So how was the removed stone dealt with? Could it be that the rock was literally ground into dust? What kind of tool left these huge lines, cutting one segment after another, in such a perfect sequence? It's amazing. Let's imagine for a moment that this was a quarry. In what case could the walls of a quarry be processed in such a way? Either deliberately, or as a byproduct of previous stages of stone extraction. Ancient and modern open quarries are typically characterized by multiple levels and step marks that form during the extraction process. This approach is practical and safe, as it prevents landslides and allows for the installation of equipment and transportation of blocks. Moreover, a high vertical wall would make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to further expand the quarry. Usually, quarries resemble archaeological digs. In them, you can trace the changes in technology, the sequence of actions, and reconstruct their history over time. But in our case, that's not the case. It seems like the rock was simply ground down to small particles. No traces of individual blocks have been found. A similar issue was observed at the Yangshan quarry in China. But the tool marks there are chaotic. Most importantly, at the Yangshan quarry, we see the final product of the quarry in the form of enormous megaliths. In our case, there are too many contradictions. It's difficult to determine the practical purpose of such work. It's one thing when we see thousands of tons of stone being moved and processed to create some kind of monumental structure, like in the Aswan quarry in Egypt. But it's entirely different when an entire mountain massif is cut away without any visible reason. Another strange aspect of this site is how much stone seems to have been removed or processed. Looking at the scale of this rock, it feels like millions of tons of material were taken away, and yet there are no records of this place. No inscriptions, no burials. Just a huge wall, made in an incomprehensible way. We're clearly missing something about the stoneworking technologies of that time. We're overlooking something very important. The idea that ancient civilizations could have utilized advanced tools or even early machines may seem far-fetched, but the evidence suggests that we might need to expand our understanding of their capabilities. It's also worth considering the broader context of such megalithic structures around the world. Sites like Baalbek in Lebanon, the Yangshan quarry in China, and the Aswan obelisk in Egypt all share puzzling elements, massive stones, advanced stone-cutting techniques, and a seeming disconnect between the methods we understand and the scale of the work. This raises the question of whether these sites might be connected by more than just architectural style. Could there have been a shared knowledge base or technology that ancient civilizations used, now lost to time? Thank you for your interest in ancient structures. Please subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Feel free to like the video or leave a comment if you wish.